All right. Welcome to another episode of the In Between podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cheney. So exciting things. I have been prepping this interview. I've been keeping our guest a little elusive, just, give a little mysteriousness. Okay. All right. Let's get down to business here. We're going to talk about our important special guest today, Brittany Tucker. All right, so let me give a quick spiel about Brittany, and then I'm going to let her take the reins. So Brittany Tucker, also don't mind me, you guys. I have my little intro script. Okay, so she's an enthusiastic keynote speaker, a coach who's trained over 350 businesses. So basically, she's out there giving keynotes, leading the dang thing, doing the most, maybe doing my dream job, but that's a side note. She shared the same stage with plenty of notable speakers, notable people, and then a few past of her corporate training clients include notable companies like, Susan G. Komen, the Georgia Chamber, Southern Company, which basically supplies power to the entire Southeast, and also the Georgia Aquarium. She holds multiple degrees, multiple recognitions, certifications, and that's only part of her story. She serves on a board of directors already. Wow. She's involved with multiple philanthropy groups, including her own scholarship that she runs with her sister. And on top of all of that, she's also writing her first book for young women alongside Linecrest Publishing. So yeah, got several things she's already doing on my bucket list, on my vision board. So very honored to have Brittany here. I'm so excited we were able to make this work. Let's hope the video works. First and foremost, apparently podcasts are supposed to be on video, and you are the one who were like, hey, do you want to do video? And I'm like, you know what? That's the push I needed. So here we are. So Brittany, thank you for joining us today.
I know. Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited that we're doing video. You're a rock star.
All right. So Brittany, give the people a little background on what you do, who you are. Are you a Georgia native? And because you currently reside in Nashville, Tennessee, right? So give a little background to the I was about to call you guys the in-betweeners. I don't know if we're there yet, but everyone who's listening.
So I live in Nashville. I've lived here for 4 years. I did live in Atlanta for 10 years. I am a Georgia native. I grew up right above Savannah area, and I am by trade a speaker. So when people look at me when I say that, I say I speak for a living. So think corporate trainings, lunch and learns, conferences, coaching individuals. So I get to use my voice. I get paid for it, and it's really fun.
I love that. That was like my dream job when I was like a little girl. I was like, I want to be a public speaker. I want to be a TV host. At the time it was E-News. Now I've kind of given myself some more value, but I love that. I love that. So a little background on how we got introduced. You used to work at a company with one of my girlfriends, Courtney. For those who are listening or have been listening to the podcast, she was on my original friendship series. We all know Coco. But anywho, she connected me to you because she was like, hey, I used to work with this really awesome, cool person. Her name was Brittany. I really think you guys would connect. And she's kind of doing what you're doing, but on like a bigger scale. And she's like, kind of spreading, I almost said spreading the gospel, but kind of spreading the leadership and the love and the self-empowerment, self-improvement. And so we connected, I think it was 2020. She connected us via Instagram, and we had a phone call, and you were so uplifting. You were so positive. You were so like, yeah, give me all these tips. Little did I know, I was in the midst of a mental health crisis, a depression, an onset of depression. And it is what it is. We've been there. We've done that. Okay. Fast forward. I'm back on my 2 feet. And I saw you made a social media post that we'll get into in a second. It was an Instagram story about something that you were in the process of healing from. And it was very powerful. So I was very inspired and just, I don't know, I had a lot of empathy and love for you to be so vocal about your experience. And I just reached out and I was like, hey, do you remember me? And we connected and I was like, hey, I finally launched that podcast we talked about 2 years ago. I would love for you to come, if you are open to it, being a guest and kind of talking about your experience. And that experience is with domestic violence. And we talked it out and you said yes. And so I'm very, very, what's what I'm looking for? Grateful, blessed that you decided to come and share your story here on the In Between podcast. So, even if I wasn't in the right place 2 years ago, clearly our paths were meant to cross at some point. So, Brittany, is there anything that let's first start with So we talked about domestic violence as the topic at hand, and it started because you were very vocal about it on Instagram, and it was coming up on your 10-month anniversary. Was that what it was? I believe, or the 9-month?
Yes. Correct. Yeah. So I shared little clippets here and there. But I think a lot of that just had to do with my healing process, and I wasn't ready to share it. But when I started sharing it, it was so interesting, Elizabeth, because so many women started reaching out to me through DMs and saying, oh my gosh, this happened to me too. And so I was like, wow, like I speak for a living. Like if I'm not speaking up about this, like who is, I had this like big heavy guilt of like, I need to speak up. And so I think it's speaking up and talking about it is also part of the healing journey. And I've got a great support team behind me who has encouraged me to share my story. And so, that's where it started.
Okay, so when it was that post in particular, you were 9, almost 10 months out. So you were finally at the point in your healing journey to start speaking out, correct? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
So
yes. It took a while.
It's not something that happens right off the bat.
No. I mean, there's so many stages of going through this that, you're in this big healing journey. And just when you think you've completely healed from it, you're like, whoa, bam, that hit me in the face. And there's some more work that I need to do. But yeah, I think since I've started speaking about it and sharing my story with people, it's been very, very healing for me.
Good. And does that come from being able to not just share your story, but find other people who are like, wow, that happened to me, and feeling comfortable to talk to you about it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, so many women have reached out through DMs and, this happened to me. I think it's, and don't quote me on these stats because I'm still learning all of them, but I think it's like 1 in 4 women go through this. And it's just, when I started learning about it and educating myself about it, I was like, wow, like I didn't realize it was this common.
1 in 4 women. That's, that breaks my heart completely.
Yes.
Well, I'm very happy that you were on the outside, on the other end of it. So, we don't need to necessarily talk about the specifics. We can see where we go in the conversation, but let's talk first in a general sense of red flags. So, because we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the conversation. So what do red flags look like? Was there gaslighting? Was there controlling? Did they have the stereotypical sociopathic like personality where you're like Mr. Smooth or Mrs. Smooth kind of thing? So what are some red flags that you notice and what you've learned also in this healing process in your journey? Yes.
So I'd like to start by saying we all like to see the good in people. Okay. And that can get you in a lot of trouble. I think some of the red flags for me now that I'm out of it, I look back and I'm like, oh, that was a red flag. And oh, this was a red flag. One of the first ones was it was moving very, very fast, like very fast. Like he had bought me gifts on the first date. And the third date, he bought me a pair of shoes. We went hiking.
Oh, wow.
And he had me like like one of the backpacks with water and the hiking shoes. And at first you're like, wow, like this is so great. But I look back on it now and like he had literally looked inside my shoes to see what size I wore to buy me a pair of shoes, on the third date. And I'm like, that's not normal, Britt, but it was a lot of, it's called, if you're familiar with narcissism, it's called love bombing. So that is they play prince or they play queen, depending on if you're a male or a female. And they take you on trips and do nice things for you and say all the right things and lavish gifts. And the whole point of it is to get you to form a bond with them and to trust them before they start to tear you down. So that's the way that love bombing works. That was a big red flag for me. Looking back now, he had no friends. He had no friends outside of his art studio that he had. And I'm like, wow, like that should have been a huge red flag for me. Like no one ever asked him to do anything. It was just people who were there and part of his art studio that were his so-called friends.
Got it. How did you guys meet, if you mind me asking, or is that too much?
No, that is okay. We actually met through a matchmaking service, a paid service. Yes, which I had to go back after I got out of it and send. So my ex actually has a felony of aggravated assault, and I had to go back and call the matchmaker and say, "Hey, you might want to be aware of this because this is a huge liability, for your company."
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things. It's like I didn't think I had to do any research on my own because I trusted this company, but also what he had told this company and this matchmaker about himself and how she portrayed him to me was all a lie. So
yeah, that's crazy. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Okay. So red flags, and you know what? Especially someone being as charismatic, being so lovey-dovey, being like so nurturing in a sense, I can totally see how you kind of ignore those signs, because the friend thing, I don't necessarily know if I would notice that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, okay. So next question. When we were talking about this, we were talking about not just like what the experience was, but the aftermath. All right. The trauma, because what you went through was traumatic. It's a PTSD. And we were talking about what trauma and going through something like that, what it does to your body. And I just don't think there's enough awareness and understanding around how this kind of thing can affect your nervous system, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked about cortisol levels, we talked about weight gain, how the body just holds trauma. So I want to talk about, I just wanted to ask you kind of if you want to share your experience with this, how your body's reacted, how your mental health has reacted. And it can even just be from the start. Did you start to notice these signs during the relationship, or did it happen afterward? And what did those things look like, and how are you overcoming them? Because I know what I've personally experienced with different traumas from my previous car accident. So,
yeah, so your body holds trauma. Okay, so if you want to read a good book about this, it's called The Body Keeps Score. But it doesn't matter how much talking therapy you do, your body is still holding on to things. So experiences, trauma are stored in your body. So that has been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, because I am type A. I know how to accomplish things. I know how to check things off a list. And I literally wrote myself on a piece of paper, I will take only 3 months to heal, and I'm going to put this behind me. And I look back on this and I'm like, that is the silliest thing. I am almost a year out and still healing. I'm actually being not transferred, but recommended to another therapist to do more somatic stuff in my body. As far as symptoms, some good examples, night sweats, nightmares. The nightmares happened for the first 3 months. I mean, I still, probably about a month ago, still woke up in the middle of the night, just like shot up, and I was yelling like, "Don't hurt me." Oh. I've had panic attacks in my car. The weight gain is still there for me. So basically the way that my therapist explained this to me is that your body holds on to fat to keep you safe when it feels like it's in a state of danger. And so my body is still in what my therapist has called hypervigilance. So it's still on very, very high alert. It still feels like it's in danger, even though I'm in a safe space. It's still not, my nervous system is not regulated yet. So my body, no matter how healthy I eat, no matter how much I'm working, my body's still holding on to a lot of it. And it's because trauma is stored in the body. So I just had another panic attack probably 2 weeks ago in the car, driving to therapy, could barely breathe when I got there. And what we realized is that the sensation I felt being trapped in traffic, I felt it all the way through my back, was the same sensation I used to get when he would come up in the kitchen and come up behind me and squeeze me really tight. So it was the same feeling. So it's really interesting how your body can't sometimes decipher between what is dangerous and what's not. It takes it a while to get back to that regulated state.
And you just celebrated your 11th month, right, anniversary of being out of the relationship, away from him. So you're still battling these, I hate using the word issues because I don't want to, it's okay. But these speed bumps, let's call them speed bumps because you will overcome them. These potholes, these speed bumps. So it takes a long time. And there's also probably no size fits all for this, I'm assuming.
No, there is not. I just celebrated 11 months. It'll be a year in September 25th, the last day that I pulled my car away from his house. And I think as part of the healing process, you go through so many emotions. And so I've tried to allow humor to make its appearance sometimes. And so it helps me to get through hard times. Sometimes I think about it and I'll just start crying and I'm like, and I'm going to get teared up thinking about it. But like, I'm just really lucky to not have been like really physically harmed in that situation. So yeah.
And for those who don't know Brittany Tucker, she's not a big person. Like, you're tiny, like you're very petite. So I'm very happy you got out of that too. And because, and also to position your behavior, your demeanor hasn't changed. You're still this, I'm not saying you aren't more fragile. I'm not saying you aren't a little cracked here or there. I'm not saying you're not going through trauma, but I am inspired by you putting one foot in front of the other and, you know, destined and determined to come out on top and not let this be kind of the scarlet letter on you. You know what I mean? So I just want you to know, like, definitely. That comes through and it's very inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been quite the journey. It's been, I feel like, and this is something I'll share too, and how much it affects your body and just tears you down. I haven't owned a scale or a full length mirror in a year. And one reason that is because when I look at myself in the mirror right now and I see the weight, I know where it came from and why it's there. And so it's still a visual reminder for me. So I appreciate the encouraging words, because there's been days when I don't even recognize myself, right? Like, I'm just like this normal, like, fun, energetic person. And I say, you know, I got pushed down a little bit, but I'm going to get right back up and it's going to be stronger. And I think that's one positive thing is, you know, what am I going to do with this situation? And I wrote it on a piece of paper on my fridge when I first got out. And I said, what will you do with what happened to you? And so that's been a big question that I've just been pondering, you know, like, how do I make a difference? How do I help people? How do I educate people? You know, I don't want this to happen to anyone else. Oh my gosh. And I just think about all the people who have been in these relationships for years. Like, mine was only a year and 2 months. And I know the aftermath of what it's caused to me. So yeah.
So with that said, I know you volunteer with the Office of Family Safety in Nashville. And everyone listening, if you are going through something like this, if you know someone who's going through something like this, we are going to link a bunch of different resources in the show notes. So please refer back to those. So the Office of Family Safety is something that's in Nashville, and that is something you volunteer with, right, Brittany? Or where? So yeah. In addition to that, where else do you see yourself going with your gift of speaking with the situation and in the story?
Yeah. So the Office of Family Safety Center has been a godsend. So they actually have helped me find resources for, like, my therapist right now specializes in domestic abuse. And so they've helped me with that. They helped me do my police report. I never had to step foot in the police station whatsoever. It's a really nice. Great organization. They do a lot of, like, emergency stuff. So, like, let's say someone has to flee a situation, like, they have they have a room for childcare there. You can bring your pet. Like, it's just, they have food there, but they've been great. So I'm actually a volunteer on one of their survivor teams right now. And I think moving forward, I think for me, it's just, you know, kind of pinpointing, like, where can I make the biggest difference? Right now, it's just education. I didn't know a lot about domestic abuse. I think one of the biggest things that I was so ignorant on is who it happens to and what the actual definition of domestic abuse is. I thought that, you know, you had to have a bloody lip and bruised eyes and have been punched in the face. And that is not the definition of domestic abuse whatsoever. It's any unwarranted touch, any threat by any object. That's all considered domestic abuse. Domestic abuse can be financial. It can be physical. It can be emotional. It can be mental, like spiritual. Like, there's so many types of domestic abuse. But yeah, I'm on their survivor team. And I think one day, like, it might just be part of what I speak on. Like, I'd love to do maybe, you know, a big speech on it somewhere. I got forwarded an email. Someone was looking for a survivor to speak at a conference, like, in May. And my speaking self was like, oh, I want to do it. And then my body that's like, no, we cannot do that.
No.
No. We're definitely, and I don't get scared on stages. I'm not nervous. Like, I've been speaking for so long, but I'm like, that's just a whole nother type of speaking. So yeah, you're actually the first person that I've done a live, you know, recording podcast with. And this is just hoping I'm gonna catapult more episodes and more recordings and just spreading the word and awareness about domestic abuse. So
Absolutely. Baby steps. Even if May is not when you're ready to do this, it's eventually, you're going to get there. Cause I don't know, you are just, your energy is very magnetic, so to speak. So take those baby steps. I'll reiterate, I'm grateful that you are sharing just even what you are. So Nashville is lucky to have you. Nashville is lucky to have you there. So again, everyone listening, we will have different resources linked in the show notes for you or anybody else who may be going through this. So we talked about red flags. We talked about the different resources available to offer the help. And I want to say one thing, I didn't even realize those type of programs existed into the level, like the capacity that they do. Like you never even stepped into a police station. That's incredible.
Yes. Yes. I think a lot of bigger cities have centers like this. I'm not sure that, obviously the smaller cities probably won't, but it's great. Even the building is set up for trauma survivors. So like from the smells to the way the furniture is shaped to the paintings, everything is it's very, very well done. So you feel very safe in there.
Beautiful. Okay. So we will tread water on this conversation. You lead the way, baby girl. So I want to kind of talk about what made you realize that you needed to get out, that you had to get out. Was it something you were piecing together? Was it cold turkey? What were the steps you took to get out? And let's just kind of go from there. Like once you were out, were you already seeking support? Were you once you were piecing it together, were you seeking support and that's what kind of helped push you to get out? I just wanted to see if you want to kind of go into that.
Yeah, I left so many times, but I also went back so many times. And I think like the average survivor goes back at least 6 or 7 times to their abuser. I think that's the stats around it. We would get in fights, things would happen and I'm like, this is not normal. I would leave, There's one time he kicked me out of the house. I was at the end of COVID and I went and got a hotel room for the night and it was this whole fight over measuring cups. He got mad that I got rid of the metal measuring cups and he had to use plastic ones. And so I can tell you so many stories, but I think, things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And you go back to, it's called a trauma bond. So it's basically kind of similar to why people who are kidnapped, why they don't leave their kidnappers. Because you form what's called a trauma bond. It's like an emotional bond. So the way that it's formed with narcissism is that love bombing stage in the very beginning. They get you to trust them. So anytime things are bad, anytime something's bad, you go back to, I see this part of them, right? And they were really nice and they did all these great things. But the degrading, it's basically love bombing, getting you to trust them. Then it starts the devaluing, degrading. Then there's breadcrumbing in there, which is where if things are going bad, they might go buy you a gift or they might take you to dinner and then you're still holding on. And then, and I remember even after he had kicked me out, I was starting to look for a new place and he called me back up and he was like, this is not what I wanted. And, you can stay here until you find somewhere. And, silly me, I went back and there's been so much I've had to work through with guilt and just being really harsh on myself on why I did that. But now that I'm out and I understand how narcissism works, I've given myself a lot of grace in saying, hey, this is just who he is. He's a master manipulator. This is the way that he works. And I just got tied up in the web.
That's a beautiful way to look at it and giving yourself grace. And I'm also kind of alluding to how bumpy and wild being in a web is. So once you start making these realizations and you were getting out, how did the support kind of help you get out? How did it kind of, they kind of helped you walk the path, get out of that? And how do they, more importantly, help you after you were out? That really fragile, sensitive period afterward.
Yes. The first 3 months were a shit show. My sister came up and she actually stayed with me for a month just to make sure, hey, I was showering and she was feeding my dog. She actually unpacked all my boxes for me. And
Aww.
Yeah, it was so nice. I just, I didn't feel safe here. It was almost like, is he going to find me? And at the time he was already occupied with a new person. But I think
of course.
Yeah, of course. course. That's a true narcissist. They always have to have supply. Mine was there when I went back to get my things. Mine was there. The new girl was there like 6 days after I left. So yeah, my sister came and she helped me, and it was just a period of like, it's called in the narcissism world, it's called the fog. So it's fear, obligation, and guilt. And you are literally, when you're in this relationship, you're in what is called a fog, and you can't see anything. It is like blinding. My memory started to come back after those first 3 months. So the way that my therapist explained it to me is when your body sometimes senses danger or it's in survival mode, it disassociates. So you don't remember things. It's kind of crazy. I'd be sitting at the red light and I'd be like, holy shit, that happened, right? And I'd pull out my phone and I'd write it down. And I think it was just this like, I think the biggest word to describe it, Elizabeth, was shock. It was complete shock, because not only was I coming out of this, but I was also finding out all this information about him that I didn't know about him. So basically his image, he has an entire false image. So if you've ever seen the movie Dirty John, it's pretty much, he's like Dirty John 2. So everything is made up from like where he graduated and, what he did in the military, like all this was made up. So it was kind of like I'm coming out of an abusive relationship, but I'm also in shock because my life for the last year was a lie.
Wow.
So it started with, basic therapy. And then, okay, now I need to go see the Office of Family Safety Center because they can help me specifically with this. And I eventually want to do a report, but I don't know how to do a report, I think when I realized it was as bad as it was, is when I connected with the 2 women he dated before me. And it was almost like a light bulb went off. Like, okay, I wasn't crazy. This really happened. He has abused multiple women. I'm number 4 that I know of at this point. And it was just almost like this, it's hard to explain. It was like I was in this virtual world, and it's like I stepped out and I was looking at it from the outside and like, whoa, that really just happened,
And you're also kind of coming out of blackout periods. You know what I mean? Like you're starting to piece together certain things that happened to you that you had no recollection of. Like the veil had been lifted. Oh my goodness. Bless you.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite I think sometimes I still I've become really good friends with the 2 girls before me now because it's interesting.
Trauma
all our
survivors.
Stories are very similar. Yeah. Well, I mean, we were all abused by the same person. And so we all have that in common and we understand.
So how did you ensure your safety when you were leaving him? Like when you talk about the last time you saw him, when you drove out, how did you ensure your safety? Or you just kind of like, God bless, like just making a prayer, praying that it's all going to work out. You're going to get out okay.
Yeah. So one of the first things I did was, and it was almost like a little embarrassing because I just moved into my new place, but probably about a month after moving in, I just let all my neighbors that live all around me know what had happened to me and like what he drove. And like, this is not normal. If this car shows up and this type of person looks like this shows up. And they were all very, very supportive. They've all been so amazing just in my healing journey. I've been so blessed to be on the street. But that was one of the first things.
That's great.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that I did. And then, I didn't do a restraining order. I didn't think I needed one at the time because he already had a new supply. There was no reason for him to, come after me. He was getting his ego fed at that point. So yeah, that was the first thing. And then just taking care of myself was obviously of high importance. Survival
right. Mode. And you don't have to answer this or I can cut this out, but did you end up having to get a restraining order on him?
No, not at all. I have not done one yet. The last time I met with the police officer, talked to the detective that I've been working with, they always say, if you feel like you need one, like you can do one.
Right.
But he's just so occupied. He's now married and has a baby already.
And that was very quick with the same person.
Yes.
6 days later.
Yes, the baby's already here. Yes. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it right now because of he's preoccupied. But I think if he knew that I was sharing, I think I'm the first girl that's ever peeled back the mask of who he is. And not only his abuse, but like the fact that his entire image is false. If he were to know that, then that could be a different story of where I would feel that I'm in danger. So.
Okay. So I'm glad that you were able to get out safe and share your safety. So this was a very complicated process. It took time. It's still taking time. And there's been waves. Like you said, just 2 weeks ago, I had a panic attack thinking about just the tightness of the car and traffic, thinking about what happened, an experience you happened with him. So, we're recording right after the 11-month anniversary. You're almost at a year.
Yes.
Now, looking back, how do you feel being alive here today?
Good. I mean, I think when hard times happen in our life, we tend to downplay it, right? It's almost like
agreed.
It wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't that bad. And I think by actually admitting to myself, no, Brittany, it was really fucking bad. Like, that is when my healing journey started. When I could admit to myself that no, what you went through, there's no downplaying of it. Like, I think even when I got my police report finalized back and I read the statement, so I had to sit down with a police officer and share, everything. I had hours of audio recordings of him abusing me, pages of stuff. And when I got back, they basically do a body cam on you and film everything. And then I type up the report. And so when I got my finalized report back, I read the police officer's statement and it said assault. And I just sat there and I was like, wow, like this, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a term for it. But what I told this officer is considered assault, and one of the biggest things to know too is that he's a convicted felon for aggravated assault where he tried to strangle someone, pretty much, one of his exes. And people don't know this, but people who live through strangulation, right? Like, let's say strangulation doesn't kill someone. They're like 600 times more likely to be killed by that person. And so that's just the level of like person we're talking about. This is not like some person that pushed you or, the capability that he has is, he's already done it to one person, and I think when I had to do it's called a danger assessment, and they sat me down and we went through all these questions, do you feel safe right now where you're at? All these sorts of things. And the advocate at the center said, do you think he could kill you? And it was the fastest I've ever answered a question. And I was like, yes, I do think he could kill me, and I think when you start saying things like that out loud, and not downplaying it. And I think the downplaying it comes from, there's embarrassment, right? There's shame. There's guilt. There's like, I've gone through all these emotions with myself of why I didn't leave earlier. But I think the healing really started when I admitted to myself how bad it really was.
Oh man, you got me goosebumps with the, you could have killed me comment. So, thank you for sharing that. Very, very powerful. Yeah. So we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but how does the trauma still affect you to this day? So you kind of already talked about, like, just 2 weeks ago, like we said, the panic attack. We talked about the different, like the way it affects your body, ways that you are kind of out of your control. It doesn't matter what exercise or what you do. It's the trauma rooted that's got to just naturally get away as you heal. Is there any other context or anything else you'd like to add to that, and how the trauma has affected you, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, maybe how you, I'm not saying you're ready to jump to the dating pool anymore, right this second, but even just how it's affected your relationships with people.
Yeah, I think this season I've slept more than I've ever slept in my entire life. Okay. That's my body craving the rest that it needs from coming off of the situation that it was in. I've been way less social. So I've said no to a lot of things. And it's not that I don't want to do stuff with people. Like, loud noises really affect me now. Like, big crowds affect me way more than they used to. So I think it's affected my social life. Obviously, the weight gain, just not even recognizing myself, that's something I've struggled with because I've always been a super healthy person. But I think I've told myself, this is something my therapist said, and she said, Brittany, you have to be okay with the gray area of healing. And so what that means is, I just want the healing journey to be done so I can move on with my life. And that's not how it works. Like, healing... She said to me, she said, Brittany, what if healing doesn't have a destination? And I was like,
oh, wow.
I've never thought of that, And trauma, here's the thing with trauma. It's not something you heal with and you forget about it and it's never there. Trauma will always be there. It will always be a part of my life. What I'm learning to do in the healing journey is how to manage it and manage my emotions around it and my coping mechanisms around it. That's where the healing journey is. But I think as far as like everyday life, it's even affected my dog, and it makes me so pissed off when I think about it. But she's very on hyper alert too. So when I was going through everything and getting out, I took her home to my parents' house because I was hopping around and staying with friends and Airbnbs and stuff, trying to find somewhere. And so my parents said to me when they were keeping her, they said, I remember my dad saying, Brittany, has someone hurt her? Has someone hit her? Because she's just very skittish right now. And it's like her little body was on such high alert for such a long time too, that we both still experience it. Like, I'll give you another good example. This probably happened like 4 or 5 months ago, but something fell very loud in my house. And this is a good example of how the body stores trauma. So when the sound was over, I got up. I was literally in a fetal position on the ground with my hands over my head. And so I didn't realize what had happened, but I was like, oh my gosh, my body was reacting to that danger very quickly. And it just made me think back to a lot of times when he was like yelling, I would like step back away from him. It's like your body knows when it's in danger. And so yeah, I mean, it still affects my daily life. As far as the dating life, I mean, I've been out to dinner with like 2 people. I actually have a date this week, which is exciting, but I think, you know, I don't feel like I'm 100% yet of who I really am. And I don't want to dump this on someone else right now too. And so I've been very cautious about that and saying, I'm going to focus on myself right now and healing myself. And that will happen when it's supposed to happen. But yeah.
And I think that's perfectly okay. Baby steps. I love that you are putting yourself out there, even if you're like, hey, I know I'm not ready for anything serious, but just getting comfortable with the companionship, like that's going to take a second to build that trust. So it seems like you have a good grasp. No, I don't know if grasp is the right word, but a good approach to the timing that it takes. And I just want to go back and say one thing that you said that, oh my God, gave me goosebumps, was the gray area of healing. That is such a real, true thing. I know I've experienced it too, and just my mental struggles and different things that I've had to overcome. So I appreciate you offering that wisdom and that part of your story, because I think it's something that we tend to forget and tend to want to speed, because especially if we're in a really bad spot, really crappy, shitty spot, it's like, okay, I want to be better. I want to be ready to go. You know, let's go. Yeah. And it's like, no. It takes time. And you're going to be here. Okay. Wow. And then every once in a while, maybe you'll even have like a low moment where you're like, well, shit, it's been 1.5 years. Why is it still happening? So it's really beautiful. Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you. I know, it's so funny. I literally, you know me, I'm like type A. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up for this therapist and I'm going to do this trauma informed yoga. And I'm going to read these books. And I'm like, but I've done, you know, I remember telling my therapist, I was like, but I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Why is it not going away? You know? And I think that's just where I've had to give myself grace. But yeah, I mean, I'm still, you know, I'm about to meet up with a new somatic therapist. I mean, it's always something, but I've tried a lot of different things, and we can share a lot of the stuff I've done, you know, in my healing journey. I'd love to share with people and things that have helped me. So.
Yeah. Well, do you want to share the different things that you've done? I was going to say, with the gray area of healing, you're building this toolkit, and you seem like the kind of person who's going to share that with the world. So yeah, like, let's talk about it. What kind of different things have you seen, like, been successful, that has worked? However deep or low you want to go, let's do it.
Yeah. So the first thing, obviously, getting a therapist, but I can even tell you the difference in a normal therapist, who's great, by the way, one of my former ones, to the one I'm working with now with domestic violence. Like, it's just like night and day. Like, they just understand so many things. So getting someone who specializes in domestic violence, domestic abuse, is awesome. As far as body work, like, I've just been trying to, this is what I tell myself, because I'm used to working out, but because my nervous system was so unregulated, like, putting like hard workouts was actually not good for me, because it was putting more stress on my body.
Oh, so interesting.
Yes. So basically what I've been doing is just, I tell myself, am I moving my body today? So just, even if it's light movement, like I've been doing a lot of light movement over the last year, and that's just walking. I try to get out at least once or twice a week, and what I call grounding. So it's earthing. And that's basically where you put your feet on the earth, and it helps heal any inflammation in your body. I've also worked with an emotion code practitioner. So I don't know if you've ever heard of these.
Interesting.
But
No, I haven't.
So they basically help you tap into the emotions that are stored in your body and help release those. So that's been something I've done. It was eye-opening.
I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write that down.
Yes, it's called Emotion Code Practitioner. The first time I did it, I was like, and I'm really woo-woo anyways. I'll try anything, but I was like, how is this gonna work? Like, how is she gonna tap into my body? And the first session, she knew nothing about me. She knew nothing about my situation, and she could tell me what emotions, where they were in my body, who placed them there. She literally said, "Your ex in there." And she could tell me the time frame and it happened. And everything she did was like dead on. So I've done that. I've read just about every book on narcissism. And I think one reason I've done that is because for me, I'm someone who has to understand things before I heal from them.
Yeah.
And so understanding what happened to me, big picture, and how these people operate was very, very helpful for me too. Giving myself, like I said, I've given myself a lot of rest. Like I go to bed at 8:30 every night. I've never gone to bed that early, but my body just needs it right now. And so just giving myself grace. I journal a lot. I write a lot. It's very healing. That's another thing that I've done. And then obviously having a good support system, the Office of Family Safety Center is amazing there. I literally emailed them before doing this podcast with you and kind of went over everything. And they're so great about empowering, people's voices, and that.
I love that.
My sister's been there for me, just people who would send me cards in the mail and things like that have just all helped my healing journey.
So network, if not just personal, but not to say that the Office of Family Safety Center hasn't been turned into relationship family, so to speak, but a support system in all different areas. That's really beautiful. And I just want to say that the whole reading thing, I'm the same way. Like I like to read. It helps me understand. So you're not crazy for that. I am the same. I'm the same way. I am the same way. Also because my mind is always like constantly going, and it, like when I read, it kind of keeps me right there streamlined to what it is. So it's like easy. I don't know. I regurgitate it a lot better.
It's okay. That's okay.
So what advice would you give to yourself now looking back? You are almost a year out of this. And you've come a long way, and maybe there's a little bit more distance you got to go. But what's the advice you would give to yourself? Because I also think that's advice that others might need to hear.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, go with your gut feeling. There were a lot of things that happened at the very beginning when I look back on them that just gave me like an unsettling feeling, things that I kind of questioned in my mind. And I was like, well, this is not adding up and this is not adding up, but it's not like you're going to go check someone's yearbook, right, of who they are. So I would say, number one, go with your gut feeling. And number two is really, really sad to say, but always do a background check on someone. It's sad we have to do this nowadays, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry. If I would have known that mine had an abusive past, there's no way I would have gone on a date with him. I would have continued dating him.
Right.
And because things like this is not just, he went to jail for marijuana or a DUI, all the silly things we did when, people make mistakes growing up. This was, no, he tried to harm someone else, and the details of that incident that I found myself, by the way, by doing a White Pages background check for $20.
Wow.
And I drove to the courthouse and got the entire papers and read the entire police statement. It was very, a lot to take in of the details that happened to her. But I think just looking back at myself, like, don't be afraid to reach out for help. I think a lot of it has to do with pride. And I think a lot of it had to do with, well, I don't want to bother someone else, and them hearing about my relationship problems, or, I think we've always been taught too, right? Like relationships take work and those sorts of things, but there's a difference in something like that and healthy and what's not healthy. I would also say, please, please, please educate yourself on domestic abuse, what it is, what the definition of it is, what it looks like, where you go for help. There's hotline numbers you can call. The number for the domestic violence hotline, the national one, is 1-800-799-7233. But I think just educating yourself. So even if it's not you, you know, this is an interesting thing to think about, Elizabeth, but I was like, I never in a million years thought something like this would happen to me. Ever. Right?
Right.
I'm highly educated. I own my own business. I have a support system, you know, like I was so ignorant about who this happens to and how it happens. And I think if I could go back, like I wish there would have been a class in college, or I wish there would have been someone that sat me down and said, hey, these are the signs. So even if you don't think it's going to happen to you, just know because of the stats and 1 in 4 women, it's going to happen to someone you know. And so
absolutely,
that's what I would give advice on too, is to educate yourself about it.
You know, to be fair, it's easy to think like that will happen to me because you're educated, this and this. I have a good head on my shoulders. I have a good read on people. I'm in touch with my intuition. Like I can pick up, but the thing about these narcissists, sociopaths is they, for the lack of better words, they bamboozle you. Like, let's be for real. So, so trust that gut. If something doesn't seem right, chances are it's not. 1 in 4, that's a scary statistic.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. You're right. I think that's the whole, you know, who they are as people and thinking, you know, I'm smarter than that. Or, you know, if a girlfriend were to come up to me and say, hey, like, this is happening to me, I'd be like, well, pack your shit and leave, right? Like, that's crazy. But to think that I was actually in it, you know, and I went back multiple times, like it's mind blowing, but it's all a mind game. It's all a mind game. It's all a trauma bond. They're very, very good at the game of being really, really bad people.
They're really good at being bad.
Yes.
Goodness.
My wrote the textbook on it. So, right. But I think it's more about awareness and, you know, what I'm taking from this and what I'm learning from this. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing is this, it's so interesting because it's almost like, I'm trying to think of the way to describe this. It's like a full circle. So I speak for a living, and as a survivor now, it's all about using your voice and speaking up. And so it's like the weirdest connection for me. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
It's a weird parallel for sure.
It is. Yes, it is. And I think speaking up and using my voice for me is not only for me. Like I've thought about this, and it's for the 2 women before me who didn't get to speak up, you know, because they were still living in fear, and just, you know, had a lot of different feelings and emotions around their experience. And so when I'm speaking up and when I'm doing stuff like today, it's not only for me, but it's for the 2 women who went before me, and just the relationship and the big impact they've played on my healing journey too. So
that's beautiful. Do you know what I hear? Like when you say all this, I hear a story of resilience. It's more than just a story of overcoming. It's a story of resilience. It's a story of finding or keeping the power you always had and not losing it. I mean, it's a very powerful story. And, you know, 11 months seems like forever, but I have a feeling that there's a lot of people that it took them a little bit longer than that. So I thank you for kind of paving the way and being okay to share what you've experienced, because I'm sure it's a little traumatic even just to kind of relive some of these moments and kind of even talk about the healing and the whole process. You know what I mean? The aftermath is just as bad as the in between, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know just some stuff I've shared, like I felt it throughout my whole body just sitting here. It's like, it's crazy to explain, but I appreciate you like having me on, because I think it's people like you that are going to give us, you know, platforms and opportunities to share this, that are going to, you know, impact other people and help educate other people. So I just appreciate you like just being open to helping me tell my story and the healing journey from it. So.
Well, I hope I could create a safe environment. So thank you for saying that. But, you know, my thing is lifting up voices that need to be heard and that are going through situations that we're all going through. 1 in 4 women, literally, we are all going through it. That's a very close demographic. So, or statistic, excuse me. So, I'm glad that this was a space that you felt comfortable to share. And I know that your words are going to be impactful. I know your words are going to be powerful. And the more you go down this journey, like you said, you're a speaker, and the more healing, the more you explore and uncover about yourself and this whole thing that happened to you, you are going to change people's lives, and you are going to empower people to want to better themselves and get out of it. So I'm getting like emotional. Sorry, that's weird. But anywho.
I appreciate it. I'll share this with you because after I left, we had emailed back and forth a couple of times because there were some things that got left at his house. I sent someone to get the big furniture. There's a lot of stuff that got left, but we were emailing back and forth. And I just, the very last thing I emailed to him was, "You've abused me. And when I'm fully healed, I will tell my story." And so that's the last thing I said to him. And so it's very like, okay, this is really happening now. You know, this is kind of like full circle. And I think the coolest thing in that is like, hopefully my hope is that it helps other people. It helps educate other people. And even if it's just one person, you know, gets out of an abusive relationship from this, like, I feel like that's totally worth it to me, you know, but I don't know. It's so many women are silenced and men too, right? But so many women are silenced because they live in fear of their abusers, and their abusers still not being able to speak up. It's almost like they still have power over them. And if one thing's going to come from this, like, he no longer controls me. He no longer controls me. This is my story to share, and I'm going to share it, and I'm going to share the details of it. You know, I'm going to share the things that happened. Yeah. It's very empowering. It's very exhausting. It's very emotional. It's very, there's so many feelings around it.
I have goosebumps from everything you just said, FYI. I don't know if you saw me, but I was like pointing to my arm. Like, I got shivers through my whole body through that. So I am so glad that you had the last word in that sense. That's very powerful. So Brittany, are there, before we close out on the episode, and I know this is just the start. Well, this is not just the start for Brittany Tucker, but this is the start in your power journey with this. Is there any last words you'd like to say to anybody listening, maybe anybody who is experiencing this and you're hitting some nerves that making them kind of think introspectively, or also anybody who's listening who knows someone who's going through? Anything you'd like to leave audience with?
Of course. Yeah. I'd say, first of all, you're not alone. Okay. So I think sometimes people feel very alone in these situations. You're not alone. If you're listening to this, like, please feel free to DM me. Like, I'm more than happy to talk to you. If you feel like you're in a relationship like this, like, I will totally get on the phone with you, but know that you're not alone. Know that you've got to give yourself grace. Know that it's okay to leave. There's resources out there, right? Especially if you're not in a financial situation, like, there are places out there that will help you. And just that you have a voice and you exist for a reason. And that no matter what your abuser has said to you, know that it's not true. And I think that is one thing that when I reached out to the 2 women before me, I knew who he had dated, and I reached out to them and I just said, "Hey, I'm Brittany. You don't know me. I think we have similar stories of dating someone. I just got out of the abusive relationship. I'd love to talk to you if you'd be open to talking to me." And one of the women, the first thing she said back to me was his name. And I said, "Yes." And then she said, "I'm glad you're still alive." That was the first thing she said to me. And the second thing she said to me is, it was like, "The lies he said about you or the way he made you feel is not true." And I think that's something that I would share with people, you know, like, it's not whatever you've been told, whatever you've been made to feel, like, that's not who you are. This is just what these people are really good at and what they do to feed their own ego. It's a monster way. That's the only way to describe it. But you don't have to believe any of the things that they've said about you or the way that they've treated you, because it's absolutely not true.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. Perfect. What a great message to end on. So you kind of mentioned that people could follow you, reach out to you. So where can everybody find you, Brittany?
Yeah. So I'm a millennial. So I live on Instagram. It's Brighter with Britt. I do have a TikTok. I think I have like 1 video up. I'm not there yet. But yeah, Brighter with Britt.
TikTok is hard.
I know. I have a website. It's actually going under construction right now. So, so Brighter with Brit would be the best place. But yeah, I'm here to help anyone that needs the help.
And I'll make sure to link all of your stuff in the show notes along with the resources. And we'll connect over that to make sure we get all the right ones. Well, if I haven't said it enough already, Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today on the In Between podcast, sharing your story, sharing your power, your words, your energy. It's beautiful. It's positive, it's healing. And I know that it doesn't always look like that every day. So thank you so much. And, hopefully I'll get you back on the pod eventually. And I look forward to seeing you continue to thrive and just go out there and kill it.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. You're a rock star.
Thank you for listening to the In Between podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go leave a review, like, subscribe, follow on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere and everywhere you listen to your podcasts. And if you'd like to keep up with me, you can follow me on Instagram at in.betweenpod. That's in.betweenpod, on TikTok, In Between Podcast. And guess what? We're on video now, so check me out on YouTube. And without further ado, I will see you all beautiful people next Wednesday for another episode of the In Between podcast. I'm Elizabeth Cheney, and I'll talk to you later.